So it's been an event-filled week whereby I rarely read the news because it's too conflicting to me. The story of three white men with glasses, then an Hispanic-looking male turns up with the name Crucius. It's not very white, that name, is it? Does it mean crucify? And then we had the news channel reporting directly out of the portal and reporting events to us 25 minutes ahead of time. Nice of them to warn us. But you would think with that level of insight, perhaps they should replace the FBI to prevent further incidents, do you not think? And also, like magic this week, the media ran the two agendas that this show has warned of for a while. White supremacy, which is an illusion in and of itself, we are all slaves, and gun crime. And they wheeled out the failed Pindar Sotero to demand changes in gun laws. This is the very same man who spent 8 years in the White House. Why didn't he change them then? And let's not forget that he was also part of the cover-up of Fast and Furious, which involved high-level government employees, including him, doing what? Giving guns to Mexican criminal gangs. It's one thing laughing at the other. As for all the shootings this week, the fact remains, unless you were there, you cannot verify with 100% proof all got shot or none got shot. Some died or none died. Assuming they did is not and never was fact. And too much of our day-to-day narrative is based on assumption, not fact. Largely fed to us by fake news from their world, not ours. Now I want to clear something up from last week. I made an error. I mentioned in one of the pieces last week that the new Fed building in Macau near Singapore, actually it's near China, not Singapore, so I just wanted to clear that up. A couple of things that have cropped up this week, and some more shows and some more clown behaviour. People ask me, should I write a book? Oh dear. Should I attend more calls? Should I do more Zoom calls? And Thomas should do this, and Thomas should do that, and Thomas should do the other. Or I need to speak to you privately. Or the classic, I know you're busy, but please watch this 2-hour video and give me an assessment. Or read this 2 to 3 page email and get back to me with your opinions. We'll have more on lengthy emails shortly. Oh dear. So people would like me to write a book. One would like to ask, where do you think I will get the time to do that? I wonder do people think whether I'm entitled to have some sort of personal life. Not that it's much as it is. Well, we do have all the shows. Yes, they're long shows to listen to. But the must listen to shows give an overview. I think it's 13 or 14 now. And they're mounting up, and there'll be more soon. But we also have the transcripts on Patreon. You know, sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks behind because I forget, because I have too much to do. That in and of itself is a mini book each week. You know, it's about 9, 10, 11 pages long of the intel, sub-intel portions, some pieces that I address early on in the show, and all the op-eds. So all the pieces are there. Those transcripts have been there now that covers all the shows for the past 2 years. They're all there. You know, it's a lot quicker to read than to listen to a 3-hour show. So if you want to catch up on things or want to read a book, it's already there. You know, it's up to people to study and learn. And let's not forget, we also have the new ebook done by some of the members that covers a vast amount of topics contained within the show, and also some personal opinions on the way they see things. So that's available on the file section of MeWe and also the Facebook page. Go and check it out. You want a book, it's there. So we had 2 shows last weekend, a disrupted show with Randy, and so not to be defeated, we ran the show again on Alan's platform. That was 3 hours of total information on many important topics that affect us day to day, and it was great input from all, and these shows seem to be universally popular, and we will endeavour to do at least 1 show each month with varying topics for the 3 of us to cover. So look forward to that. So that's 1 extra show per month. And then on Sunday we did a new show for THI called Inside the Matrix, that covers similar topics to the Ground Crew Command show, as I understand it. We had a fairly rip-fire 2-hour show that spanned thousands of years and dimensions, and was quite an introduction for Jimmy's listeners. I hope I hope their heads have recovered. Whilst the topics are not necessarily new, some of the information contained is. And I want to say thanks to Jimmy, who was a great host, allowed the guests to speak and engaged in a rather good way. Well, we had quite an impact on that show as well, and they have asked me now to come on the first Sunday of each month now. So that's 2 extra shows per month we've got to do now. And people still want me to write a book in between. Like I said, I've written several books, and it's your obligation to read them on my Patreon. And if you feel you need to understand or learn more, it's all in there. And you can always ask questions when we have the Q&A section, which is not as common as it was. But there you go. Coming up this weekend, there will be 2 shows again. Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be a must listen to and important for all show to grasp. Now, I've done it at that time so members in the EU and the UK can listen live. And if their schedules fit in, which it looks like they will, near the end of the show I might bring Randy and Alan on for a short time also. On Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing an evening for Thomas, where people can find out some of my life and background, with Alan from Circle of White Light being the host. So look forward to that. From Russia with Love 7 is still in the works because of what is... this is by Sunday I'll have done 7 shows in 12 days. And so From Russia with Love is still being worked on and is close to completion for a show release. These are busy times, and I suspect it will get busier here on in. Kim, 2 points of contention for how people wish to play games in the background. I know some people don't like this, but people need to be aware of these people's names because they're doing their utmost to disrupt our group. But this time, Kim received an email. Kim and I both get lots of emails, some complimentary, some not, some useful, some not. But now and again, we get special emails. Ones that make your eyes water at the stupidity of it, or the total hilarity of it, like Kim got this week. And so we feel, well, certainly I do anyway, that a special award is in order for this particular email. Providing they can send us their mental institution PO box address, we will send them a special streak-free pane of glass in its own frame with your names on it, which you can both lick and drool on for the rest of your days. Take a bow. Denise Wessels, Yap Anus, what a name, and Pre-Drag Queen Saint Germain. The time you took to compile that pile of drivel, you may have been better taking your meds and getting on board the short bus. Dear me. Final minor issue I need to clear up. There's been a lot of issues going on with the Australia-New Zealand group, and I've heard it's now closed. And some of them wanted me to do a lengthy Zoom call to explain, which I don't have the time to do. And people know now in THI you have to go to great lengths over a long period of time to be removed from the group. People get lots of chances. People play on those lots of chances. They think they can push the boundaries. So the key to it is not to ask myself or the admins why the X, Y or Z has been removed, but to ask the X, Y or Z why they went so far with poor behaviour to facilitate their removal from the group. That is the question to ask. Now, things have been said to the members in Australia and New Zealand that are 100% not correct. At no point did I criticise any of the Australian members other than the offending one. You all know who she is now. And they are spreading disinformation to deliberately disrupt the group. It was going on while she was in the group, and it's gone on since. I want the members of that group to restart the group without those two particular members. They're not needed, they're not helpful. And carry on. All members are important to me, in whether, doesn't matter what colour you are, what religion you are, what race you are. All members are important. What is not important is clowns disrupting our group, and there are many of them. Many of them have been removed. So please get together and reassemble the group without the offending two members. If they're going to continue to behave poorly, let them do it on the outside. We don't need these people. They're children in adult bodies and need to put some adult pants on. Right, let's get into some news. On a momentous day, or it was a momentous day for the tribal nations, Darth's daughter, Congressman Liz Cheney, the House of Republican Conference chairwoman, stated that the successful litigation by the tribes and environmentalists to return the grizzly bears to the Greater Yellowstone to the Endangered Species Act was not based on science or facts, according to her, but motivated by plaintiffs' intent on destroying our Western way of life. All sounds very Rothschild, that, doesn't it? What Rothschild said to Kim, you're ruining our way of life. Too right we are. And one of the largest tribal plaintiff alliances in recent memory prevailed in the landmark case Crow Tribe et al. Versus Zinke last September, when U.S. District Judge Dana Christian ruled in favour of the tribes and the environmental groups after finding that the Trump administration's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had failed to abide by the ESA, which is Endangered Species Act, and exceeded its authority in attempting to remove federal protection for the grizzly bears. Now, on Tuesday, the Wildlife Service officially returned federal protections to the grizzly bear, and removing protections from them revered as sacred to a multitude of tribes would have left the grizzly vulnerable to high-dollar trophy hunts and lifted leasing restrictions on 34,375 square miles. Now, extractive industry, livestock and logging interests are amongst those who desired of capitalising on that area, and a region of that comprised of tribal treaty, reserved rights and ceded lands. And there was a quote from Tom Rogers, a senior advisor to the Rocky Mountain tribal leaders, said if it wasn't Liz Cheney and the era of the Trump administration, you might be rendered speechless by the insensitivity and mendacity of that statement. That's replying to Darth's daughter. Now, Mr. Rogers testified at May's congressional hearing on the Tribal Heritage and Grizzly Bear Protection Act, H.R. 2532, which was introduced by House Natural Resource Committee Chairman Raul Grijalva and was inspired by the Grizzly Treaty signed by over 200 tribal nations, and said, so in striving to protect our culture, our religious and spiritual freedoms, our sovereignty and our treaty rights, all of which are encapsulated in the Grizzly issue, we are destroying Cheney's idea of the Western way of life. And he went on, I would remind the Congresswoman that at the time of the Lewis and Clark expedition, an estimated 100,000 grizzly bears roamed from the Missouri River to the Pacific coast. All of that was Indian country. Now there are fewer than 2,000 grizzly bears, and our people live in third world conditions on meagre reservations in the poorest counties in the US. Here. Two things about that. There's no need for the tribal people to live on meagre reservations or in poorest counties either. The chiefs of those tribes need to get their act together and give back to the people all the money they're creaming off nature via the oil wells that are dotted all over their lands. You know, it brings in a lot of money, not to mention the casinos. And it's time they got their act together and gave back some of those ill-gotten gains and profits to their own people. Otherwise, they're no different to the cabal. They collect everything and give nothing back. It's no different. And the tribal people en masse need to get their act together. There's a lot of money in those tribes, particularly in the casinos and the oil industries, and they need to give back. And there are funds available for all tribes when they are released. But if you think we're giving it to all the chiefs, you can think again, because most of them, right round the world, as we've found out in several talks, are corrupt or following the wrong path. Does she really want to talk about destroying a way of life? Asked Rogers. A Cheney talking about our way of life. What would she know about life? Most Westerners are happy to have areas for the wildlife. It's only psychopath families like hers that wish to build, dig and destroy everything. And it's time she got back in the bunker with her dad, Darth Vader, if you ask me. Why is she even there? Foreign nationals operating in Johannesburg's CBD have condemned what they call serious human rights violations perpetrated by heavy-handed police officers. Those police are becoming a big problem globally. They ought to be very careful going forward. And these denunciations come in the wake of severe upheaval in the city centre, which last Thursday erupted into a full-scale riot. Gauteng law enforcement agencies descended on the CBD as part of Operation OK Malau, with the aim to crack down on counterfeit goods, they said. But it turned into something completely different, as we all know. And David Makora, and the chief of Johannesburg Metro Police, David Tembe, stated a large crowd of foreign nationals fought back against law enforcement officers. Makora explained that the police came under attack from bricks and petrol bombs as hordes of rioters cornered the law enforcement officers. Some people will fight back, many are. And their police operation was abruptly terminated. Makora has since vowed to retaliate against foreign nationals who attacked police officers. And the Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba, who has been especially critical of the influx of, quote, undocumented foreigners, unquote, into the city and called for a shutdown of the area. I will speak more on that later. The US military is conducting wide area surveillance tests across 6 Midwest states using, quote, experimental, unquote, high altitude balloons. Our documents filed with the Federal Communications Commission reveal up to 25 unmanned solar-powered balloons are being launched from rural South Dakota and drifting 250 miles through an area spanning portions of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin and Missouri before concluding in central Illinois. Travelling in the stratosphere at altitudes up to 65,000 feet, the balloons are intended to provide a persistent surveillance system to locate and deter narcotic trafficking and homeland security threats. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. According to a filing made on behalf of the Sierra Nevada Corporation, who are an aerospace and defense company, not FBI or Homeland Security, military. Now, the balloons are carrying high-tech radars designed to simultaneously track many individual vehicles day or night through any kind of weather, and the tests, which have not previously been reported, received an FCC license to operate from mid-July until September, following similar flights licensed last year. So it's not exactly experimental, is it? More spying on the people. Perhaps because that is also a confirmation that their five eyes went blind. So now they're using balloons. Oh my. The nearly 2-year special counsel investigation of Russian election interference led by Mueller has determined the final cost of nearly $32 million in total, a new filing this week shows. Now, the special counsel's fourth and final expenditures report took significantly longer to disclose than prior filings, I'm not surprised, and arrived weeks after the Justice Department officials expected it to be made public. Now, in its absence, political leaders, including Mr. Trump and House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, have made the cost of the investigation a focal point of their arguments for or against it. So, 32 million. You know. And what has it achieved? Now, Trump, for his part, stated last November that the investigation final costs would be more than 40 million. I will be commenting on that again later. Here's another announcement of experimental, something that the alternative media knew many years ago. The Air Force think we're all stupid and announced on Friday it will soon deploy 2 ground-based laser weapons to an undisclosed location to test how they can be used against small drones. Again, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. The service's first operational field test of an experimental directed energy weapon, they called it, DEW, as we know it, DEW. Now, the Air Force announced a $23 million sole source contract for 2 of Raytheon's high-energy laser weapon systems, through which the systems are to be tested. They've already been tested. You used them in California and at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida for 12 months in an undisclosed contested environment outside the continental United States. Really. And they said, what we really want to do is figure out how we can deploy these systems in an environment where our warfighters work and train every day, according to Evan Hunt, with a silent, Director of High Energy Laser and Counter UAS at Raytheon. Now, UAS stands for Unmanned Aerial System. So, drone. Because laser weapons could fire constantly without wasting ammunition, military technology experts have theorized they could one day be useful in combating the small, remotely operated quadcopter drones that ISIS has used. And they are also expected to be an effective counter against swarming attack drones, a concept that a handful of countries are exploring. Now, the fact that it is a laser weapon allows you to put energy in a target at the speed of light, and it can be instantaneous heating event, according to Michael Gergis, who leads the Air Force's Directed Energy Experimentation Projects. More nonsense, that is, of presenting something that is new and the future to the public. Experimental testing when it was created and used long in the past. And another example of wrong thinking, of getting technology and weaponizing it for something that has no real purpose for humanity. How about they use that directed energy weapon as part of an astrological project of incoming meteors or certain rock throwing events from certain clan groups? How about they use it for that? Something that's going to actually benefit humanity, not hinder them. And this is where, going forward, we have to change the mindset and the thinking behind all technology, because virtually every single piece of technology has been weaponized against the people. Where are we? Yeah, we're doing okay. A veteran FBI agent who wrote derogatory text messages about Donald Trump filed a lawsuit on Tuesday charging that the Bureau caved to unrelenting pressure from the president when it fired him. The suit from Peter Strzok also alleges that he was unfairly punished for expressing his political opinions, and that the Justice Department violated its privacy when it shared hundreds of his text messages with reporters. And the campaign to publicly vilify Special Agent Strzok contributed to the FBI's ultimate decision to unlawfully terminate him, according to the lawsuit, as well as to frequent incidences of public and online harassment and threats of violence to Strzok and his family that began when the texts were first disclosed to the media and continue to this day. Now, the complaint, which names as defendants Attorney General William Barr and FBI Director Chris Wray, revisits a political drama that was seized on by conservative critics of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation as proof that the Bureau was biased against Trump. Multiple investigations are underway examining whether the FBI acted properly really during the Russian investigation, and Strzok remains a frequent target of Trump's scornful tweets. Last piece before we have a music break and go into sub-intel. Federal Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who is Jewish and was involved in the Paul Manafort case and also the Roger Stone case, and whose husband worked for export enforcement agent under George Bush, this week tossed out a criminal charge against former Obama White House counsel Greg Craig. No surprise. And a blow to the Justice Department's efforts this year to prosecute foreign lobbying violations as criminal acts. Connecting the dots. Jackson threw out a charge that accused Craig of making a criminal false statement by omitting information about his work for a foreign government on a letter sent to the Justice Department in 2013. A scheme offence must be based on active falsification or concealment and not merely passivity or silence, she added, citing previous court cases about false statements. Now, Craig is still charged with engaging in a scheme to knowingly falsify a foreign lobbying disclosure to the Justice Department. And essentially he had not told the Justice Department he had worked alongside Paul Manafort as a paid agent of Ukrainian politicians. Oops. And the judge threw it out. Now the deal ends a lawsuit the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee filed back in 2012 after the House voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt for refusing to release some records the panel demanded about the probe. Connecting the dots again. During which law enforcement officials watched but did not intervene, as up to 2,000 weapons were illegally sold. Now the fight over the records ended more than a year ago, but a proposed settlement ran aground last fall after the US District Judge signalled that they would refuse to wipe out the rulings in the case. That was the Fast and Furious that I mentioned earlier. The name of the judge that threw that out? Amy Berman Jackson. Now you understand why it was so important about reforming the Justice Department and the high-level judges. Because every case that comes forward, these stooges that are deliberately installed there on behalf of factions will shut it down. It's not a justice system, it's a racketeering